Okay guys, today is very similar to what we did yesterday, but these are called explicit formulas. We will still have arithmetic and geometric. So remember, arithmetic is whenever you are adding or subtracting a number in your pattern, and geometric is when you are multiplying. Okay, so remember, do not get tripped up on the symbols. As long as you know what the symbols mean, it's okay. Alright, so we know that a sub n stands for the nth term, or your next term, or whatever term that you're trying to find. We know that a sub 1 stands for the very first term. We know from yesterday that d stands for our common difference, so what number are we adding every time, or what number are we subtracting every time? And then n minus 1. Okay, so this time we're going to be using this formula. Alright, so as long as we know what these stand for, we could plug in for them, and it's not a big deal. Alright, geometric is whenever you're multiplying by a certain number every time. So to get to your nth term, or any term, or the next term, you're going to start with your first term times, this is your common ratio, so this is the number that you're multiplying by every time, raised to the power of n minus 1. Alright, so let's jump into some examples. Okay, arithmetic sequences, so we don't have to flip back and forth. Let's write the formula at the top. So that formula was a sub n equals a sub 1 plus d times n minus 1 in parentheses. Okay, so now we're going to follow this formula. Okay, so here's my pattern. What I'm trying to do is figure out, and this is arithmetic, remember, so that means we're either adding a number or we're subtracting a number every time. Okay, so from -8 to go to -2 to get from 4 to 10. So I notice the numbers are getting bigger, so I know we have to be adding. So now I just have to figure out what are we adding every time. Well, the easiest to figure that out is 4 to 10. To get from 4 to 10, we're adding 6. -8 plus 6 is -2. -2 plus 6 is 4. 4 plus 6 is 10. So I know my common difference, d, is a positive 6. Okay, a sub 1, the first term. So my very first number is a -8. Okay, so now let's write our formula. I'm going to write it long ways, so you might want to turn and write it long ways as well. Okay, so we start with a sub n, so to get to the next term, or to get to any number you want, it's equal to a sub 1, so our very first term we said was -8, plus, so far I have a sub n equals, I plugged in for my first term, plus d, we said our common difference was a positive 6 because we're adding 6 every time, and then we're going to put parentheses n minus 1. Okay, yesterday we had to put our starting point every time, but on this one we don't because we included our starting point right here, a sub 1. Alright, so let's figure out a sub 15. So that means I want to figure out what is the 15th number. So this is my first number, second number, third number, fourth number. So if I kept going, what would that 15th number be? So that's when these formulas come in handy. Okay, so I'm going to turn it sideways. So I want to figure out when n is 15. So I'm going to put a sub 15. So right here, you can put n equals 15 because we're trying to figure out the 15th number. So anywhere I see an n, I'm going to plug in 15. Equals -8 plus 6, open parentheses. Well, we're trying to figure out our 15th number, so I'm going to put 15 right there for n, minus 1. So all I have to do now is to type this piece right here into the calculator to figure out what the 15th term will be. So my 15th term is equal to, so I'm going to pull up my calculator on my computer. I'll move this over here so we can see. Alright, and I'm going to type in -8 plus 6, oops, negative 8 plus 6. Then we're going to open our parentheses and put 15 minus 1, close your parentheses. So all I did was type this in, negative 8 plus 6, open the parentheses, 15 minus 1. Now I'm going to press enter. So I know my 15th term, if I were to continue out that pattern, my 15th term would be the number 76. So I used this formula that we came up with to figure out my 15th term. So I plugged in 15 for n, so which is here and here. All right, let's try number 2. Okay, this time I see that my numbers are getting smaller, so I know we're going to be subtracting. So I had to figure out, to get from 31 to 27, what do I subtract? Well, I know that 31 minus 4 is 27. 27 minus 4 is 23. 23 minus 4 is 19. So I know my common difference, D, this time is a negative 4 because we are subtracting 4 every time. All right, this column, we want to put our A sub 1, so our first term. So we started at 31, so that's A sub 1. Okay, so now we have to write our formula. So remember, I'm going to turn it kind of weird right here. Write it long ways. We're going to follow this formula that you have written at the top of your page. So it starts at A sub n equals, then it says A sub 1. Well, we know our very first term was 31, so that goes there. Okay, so plus our common difference, but our D was a negative, so instead of putting plus D, I'm going to put minus 4 because we were subtracting 4 every time, right here. Then I need to put parentheses and put n minus 1. Alright, so here's my formula. Okay, what we need to do next is find the 15th term, so that's when n is 15. So I'm going to use this formula, and anywhere I see an n, I'm going to plug in 15, which means this is my first term, second term, third term, fourth term. So if I would keep going until I get to the very 15th number, what would that be? So that's what we're going to figure out. So I'm going to figure out the 15th, so I'm going to put A sub 15. So my 15th number will be equal to 31, where we started, minus 4, parentheses. Well, we want to figure out the 15th number, so I'm going to put 15 right here, minus 1. So now all I have to do to find my 15th term, I'm going to take all of this and type that into the calculator. Let's see, where's my calculator? Alright, so I'm going to type in 31 minus 4, open parentheses, 15 minus 1, close parentheses, and press enter. I got negative 25. So I know the 15th number would be negative 25. So if I would write this pattern out and keep going and keep subtracting 4, when I get to the 15th number, it will be a negative 25. All right. Let's find our pattern. We start at 0, we go to 1, to 2, to 3. This one's pretty easy. What's happening each time? We're adding 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. So my common difference is a positive 1. In this column, we wanted to put our first term. Well, remember our first term is 0, where we started from. Okay, now we want to write our formula. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the formula over here so we don't have to. Oops. So I don't have to keep turning my page. Okay, so this is the formula you have at the top of your page. Okay, I just don't want to keep turning it. So I'm going to write my formula. So A sub n, so to find any term I want, I'm going to start with my first term, which we started with 0, right? So I'm going to put 0. Our common difference, D, was a positive 1, so I need to put plus 1. And then we need to put parentheses and minus 1. Okay, so now I need to use this formula to help me to figure out the 15th term. So I need to plug in 15 for n. So I know my 15th term would be equal to, so my 15th term would be equal to 0 plus 1, open parentheses, remember we're trying to find the 15th term, so put in 15, minus 1. So let's type this into the calculator. Okay, so it said 0 plus 1, open parentheses, 15 minus 1, close parentheses. So I get 14. So I know my 15th term would be 14. Okay. All right, so that's the last example that we're going to do for arithmetic. All right. So if you need to catch up writing, this is what it was. Okay, so if you need to catch up, don't forget you can also find these online if you need to rewatch them. All right, let's keep going. Oops, wrong way. All right, geometric. Remember, geometric is when you are multiplying by a certain number every time. So I'm going to go ahead and write the formula at the top so we don't have to flip back and forth. So to find any number, or your next number, you're going to take your first term, a sub 1 is the first term, and you're going to multiply it by your common ratio, so that's your pattern, what are you multiplying by every time, raised to the n minus 1 power. Alright, so we know we are multiplying by a number every time. Well, these numbers are getting bigger, so what am I multiplying 2 by to get to 6? Well, 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 times 3 is 54. So I know my common ratio, my R, is 3. A sub 1, my first term, we started with 2. So A sub 1 is 2. Alright, so now I'm going to follow this formula and plug in what I know. I'm going to turn it sideways. So I'm going to put A sub n equals. We do know our first term. Well, we said our first term was 2, so I'm going to plug that in. Times, so our first term times. We do know R. Our common ratio we said was 3, so 2 times 3. And I need to raise my R to the n minus 1 power. So n minus 1 goes up little in the air. That's an exponent. Okay, this time it's telling me to find A sub 6. So that means my n will be 6. So now I'm going to use this formula, and anywhere I see an n, I'm going to plug in 6 to find the 6th term. So if I were to continue this out, my 6th number would be what? That's what we're going to use this to find out. So A sub 6, my 6th term will be equal to 2 times 3. Remember, n is 6 because we're trying to find the 6th number, so I'm going to raise it to 6 minus 1. Alright, so now to figure it out, all I have to do is type this into the calculator. So A sub 6 equals, alright, so I'm going to pull up the calculator. So I have 2 times 3. Remember, to get the exponent, you can click this little up arrow key right here. So if I click that up arrow key, it makes that box pop up. So in the box, I want 6 minus 1. So I get 486. So make sure you have that copied down. So if I would have continued my pattern, when I got to the 6th number, that's what it would be. So if I would have kept multiplying by 3, that's what I would have got. Okay, on this one, I'm going from -5 to 10 to -20. Okay, well, first of all, I need to figure out, since it's geometric, what are we multiplying by? -5 times what is a positive 10? Well, a negative times a negative is a positive. 5 times 2 is 10. So I know that -5 times -2 would give me a positive 10. I know that 10 times -2 would give me a -20. So my R, my common ratio, is -2. In this column, we want our starting value, our A sub 1, which is -5. All right, so now let's turn it sideways so we can follow this formula that's up here at the top. So we start with A sub n equals, I know my first term, A sub 1, so I can plug that in. Our first term was -5, so I'm going to write that, -5, times R, well, we know our R was a -2, so I'm going to put times -2. Okay, and since it's a negative, anytime you have a negative and you're raising it to an exponent, you always want to put that negative number in parentheses. And we're going to raise that to the n minus 1 power. All right, so if we want to find our sixth term, I need to plug in 6 anywhere I see n in my formula. So I'm going to put a sub 6, so my sixth term will be equal to -5 times, remember you want -2 in parentheses, raised, remember we want n to be 6, so I'm going to raise it to 6 minus 1. So now all I have to do is type this piece into my calculator. So a sub 6 would equal, all right, so let's get that calculator up, -5 times, okay, remember you want -2 in parentheses, so I'm going to put -2 in parentheses, close the parentheses. Now I need to put 6 minus 1 in the exponent, so I'm going to click my up arrow key, that little caret key, and in that box I'm going to put 6 minus 1, enter. I get 160. Which means if I would have continued my pattern, if I would have kept multiplying by a -2 on the sixth number, it would have been 160. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit more time in case you need to copy that down. Okay. All right. It's geometric, so I know we're multiplying. We're going from 400 to 200 to 100. Okay, the numbers are getting smaller, which means I'm multiplying by a number that's smaller than 0. Smaller than 1, which means it's a fraction or a decimal, right? So if you're not good at it, remember you can always work backwards. So 200, to work backwards, you start with your second number. And since you're working backwards, you're going to divide, because the opposite of multiply is divide. And you're working backwards, so 200 divided by 400. So 200 divided by 400 is 1/2. 1/2 is the same as 0.5, so I really don't care which one you use. I'm just going to leave it as 1/2. So I know that 400 times 1/2, 400 times 1/2 would be 200. 200 times 1/2, 200 times 1/2 would be 100. So I know we're multiplying by 1/2 every time. A sub 1, my first value, the first number we started with, my first term is 400. All right, so let's write our formula. Remember, your formula is at the top of your page, so look up there. It starts with A sub n equals, then it says A sub 1. Well, we know our first term is 400. Then it says times R. Well, we know we're multiplying by 1/2 every time, so I'm going to put times 1/2. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in parentheses too, because it's a fraction that we want to raise to an exponent. And in the exponent, we want n minus 1. Okay, so we're going to use this formula to help us figure out our sixth term. So if I were to continue to multiply by 1/2 over and over and over again, what would I get on my sixth number? So I'm going to put A sub 6 equals 400 times 1/2. I'm going to put my fraction in parentheses. And we want our sixth number, so I'm going to change n to a 6. So in the exponent, I want 6 minus 1. Type that into the calculator. Okay, so we have 400 times, in parentheses I want to put my fraction, so control divide, 1/2. Then I want my exponent on the outside of the parentheses, so I'm going to raise it up like the exponent, the caret key, to 6 minus 1. Press enter. So I got 25/2. So if I were to continue to multiply by 1/2, the sixth number I would get would be 25/2. It could also be written as a decimal. 25/2 is the same thing as 12.5. Both are correct. All right. Put this here for a second in case you need to finish copying. All right. All right, on the back we have some multiple choice. Okay, a sequence can be generated by using, and it gives me the equation, right? Or the function or the formula, where f of 5 is 1,875. Okay, I want to know what are the first 4 terms. Well, here it's telling me that my 5th term is 1,875. So let's make our list. We want 5 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, it tells me this is my 5th term. So, okay, if you look at your formula, this is touching a letter, which means multiply, right? So I'm going to put multiply. I'm going to circle this 5. So I know that it's multiplying by 5 every time. So if I want to get my next number, I need to multiply by 5. But in this case, I want to go backwards, right? So if we're going to go backwards, the opposite of multiply is divide. So to go backwards, I'm going to divide by 5. So I'm going to take 1875 and divide by 5. Oops, wrong thing. So 1875. And since we're going backwards, I'm going to divide by 5, the opposite. So this is 375. Okay, so now I need to take 375, and we're still going backwards, so we're going to keep dividing and divide by 5. 75. So now I take 75 and divide that by 5. 15. So one more time. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. So the reason I had to do divide is because the pattern tells me to get to the next number you have to multiply by 5. Well, we're trying to go backwards, so the opposite of multiply is divide. So I divided by 5 each time. So what are the first 4 terms? So the ones that match is B. Let's see. Okay. The way I would do number 8, and I'm not going to do number 9 with you, I want you to try 9 on your own, okay, is since it gives me an equation like this, I would graph this and then I would open my table. But before we do graph and open our table, it tells me my third term is 0, okay? So let's make one table. Put table right here. My third term is 0. My fourth term is 6. My fifth term is 12, and so on. Your sixth term is 18. Okay? So what I'm trying to do is I'm figuring out which one of these match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go graph -6n plus 18. But the thing is, you can't type n into a graph, so I'm going to type x. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go add a graph. Okay, and I want to graph -6x plus 18. Okay, now that I have it graphed, I'm trying to figure out which of these matches, so I'm going to open the table, Control T, and I want to scroll down to my third term, which is 0, but is that fourth term -6? No, we wanted a +6, so I know the answer cannot be A. Alright, so we know it can't be A. It did not match our table. Alright, so let's start over. I'm going to add a graph. And this time let's do C since we can see it. I'm going to do 6n minus 18. But instead of n, you have to type x. Once we graph it, we can open our table and go check. Let's go down to our third term. Our third term is 0, that matches. Our fourth term is 6, that matches. Our fifth term is 12, good. The problem told me the sixth term is 18, that's good. And finally it says the seventh term is 24. All of those match, so I know my answer is C. Okay, that's pretty much exactly how I would do this next one, okay? So on this one, our table says our fourth, fifth, and sixth term are 56, 49, 42. So what I would do is I would graph. Remember, instead of n, you're going to have to type in x. Graph and open the table. Which one matches? Alright, so you can try 9 in just a second, okay? Let's finish 10 and then you can go back and finish 9 on your own. Okay, a sightseer dropped a penny from an observation platform at the top of a tall building. The distance the penny fell in feet during the nth second of its descent can be found using the recursive rule, and it tells me my first term is 16, and it's telling me to follow this equation. Notice it's telling me to add 32, and it wants it's the fifth one. So I know the first one is 16, right? And it's asking about the fifth. So I'm going to start at 16 and add 32 every time. So do 16 plus 32, put that number here. Then take this number and add 32 again. That goes here. Add 32 again, write that here until you find the answer. Alright, so I want you to try to find 9 and 10 on your own. Alright, bye y'all.